Hi, everyone. Thanks for continuing with me on my journey. I'm on video number 4, chapter 2 in the book, and my chosen music is Everybody Hurts Sometimes by REM. I hope you enjoy. It was in my home at the ski hill when the activity noticeably started and elevated. At the time, I was questioning what was happening, and at the same time, I was frantically looking for answers as to why. It went from a couple of oh my God occurrences in 2 previous locations to a constant flow of activity. My initial questions or first thoughts were, is it the location? Is it the house? Or is it me? Eventually I came to realize it was me and had nothing to do with the house or location. Although there are some contributing factors that I would say aided in bringing out my awareness. It was a new home that I had built, and there were many times spent alone in this house. Being alone was something that I was not used to, as well as being in the woods, and for that very reason, I was on a more of a high alert than in a comfort zone. Although I love nature, comfort for me is living in a town with people close by, not wild animals. My memories of this location are very vivid as they are the beginning of a change in my being, an awakening of my mind and spirituality, a deep place where I was introduced to something that not many can understand. I started to build my house in July of 2008. It was my first home that I built, and I was very excited and happy about the whole process. There is such a personal sense of accomplishment that comes from walking the vacant property to designing your own space and watching it materialize before your eyes, making all the choices and then visually seeing what was created with all the efforts. The house at the ski hill was ready to move into around Christmas time, but there was no smooth transition as I had not sold the previous house on Hannah Lane that I was living in. The media had just started to inform the public we were heading into a recession in the fall of 2008. Actually, we were already in a recession, but as it became publicly announced through the media, and it became more common knowledge that times were difficult and belts, sort of speaking, needed to be tightened. The housing market had declined because of the economy, and to add to the situation, we were heading into a winter season, which historically has fewer buyers looking to purchase a home. I felt very fortunate to have sold my home with a possession date of mid-February. In mid in mid-February of 2009, I moved into my new home at the ski hill. I really enjoyed the thought of living in this home that I had created. The next phase was to sit back, relax, and enjoy the location and home itself. But before I had even started construction, I was also considering the purchase of another vacant lot on the water in town, something that I could not let pass by. It was about a year later in March of 2010 timeframe that, that the so-called activity started. The first encounter in this home was a male, life-size figure that appeared at the end of my bed. I was sleeping on my right side. I had the feeling of someone looking at me, and when I opened my eyes to look, I saw the figure. I stared with my eyes wide open, waiting to see the next move it would make. I actually thought it was a person at the end of my bed. In the dark, I could not make out a face, just a shadow figure in the form of a male. Then it dissolved into nothing. It was a relief knowing that it was not a physical person in the room that I had to deal with, but at the same time, it was another OMG. What did I just see? I just saw another ghost. I just saw a male figure looking at me and then watched him disappear as if nothing took place. The weird thing about it is that I didn't scream or jump out of bed or react hysterically. Then again, this is not how I would react. I have never screamed out of fright in my whole life. I just assessed the situation, and without the sense of being threatened, I just accepted the occurrence. It had happened before with the last occurrence at Hannah Lane. It only appeared for a couple of seconds from the time I opened my eyes. The second encounter in the house at the ski hill was also a male. The figure was life-size. I was sleeping on my right side when I felt something close, and when I opened my eyes, I was stunned, but watched quietly to see a male figure looking in my jewelry box on the dresser beside my bed. He was wearing a plaid shirt, like that of a lumberjack shirt. No color, but you could make out the pattern by the black-gray shadow cast in the dark. He was about my height, which is 5 feet 5 inches, give or take. I only know this because I replicated the position he was in the next morning, and he was not overly tall for a male. He was thick through his chest with an extruded hunch on his back. I could not make out his face, only his form and the print on his jacket. He was not interested in me. He did not stand beside my bed and look at me or even acknowledge my presence. His full intent and only interest was to view inside the jewelry box that sits on top of my dresser. I was thinking, when staring at this male presence, if I should say something, but I did not. I just watched to see what he would do. Then he dissipated into thin air. I wonder what could be of interest in my jewelry box, or if something in this box could be connected to him. So I've described what was there. On top of my dresser is an antique wooden box, a gift from a friend. It looks like it might have been a silverware holder, as there is a bottom tray. You can pull out this bottom tray with the two metal pulls on each side. The tray itself has 4 compartments to separate my stuff. There is material over the tray and added hooks on the top part. I always kept the top open so all inside is exposed. All my so-called treasures are visible. I also keep my cell phone in this wooden box plugged in and on. There is always a small light coming from it. My so-called treasures have no significant value. Most are pins or brooches which I have collected. I also have old stuff. What else? I have 2 rings that I had purchased at auction. One was a male signature ring with the initials PW in small diamonds, which has since disappeared. This was one of those first experiences at auction that I would rather forget about. The ring fits my baby finger, but was very heavy with 14 karat gold. The other ring also bought at auction is an antique, probably an engagement ring. I do occasionally wear it on my right hand. There are necklaces hanging from the upper half of the box, which is left open. One bears a locket of a man called Harold. It belonged to my great Aunt Mary. Inside the locket is Harold's picture. This was great Aunt Mary's love of her life, who died before they married. She never married. Harold was the only one. There was also other necklaces as well as a stopwatch on a chain. There is a brooch that came from a few generations back. It looks like a poppy, having a cluster of small shaped purple stones inside, acting as the stigma. They say that spirits are attached to people or things. In this case, I would expect that this spirit was attracted to something in my jewelry box. What? I have no idea. What was noted from my perspective was that here is a spiritual visitor who has just shown up and is aware of what he is looking at. He might be seeing it as if he is really in my space. just like a human being, only human beings don't appear and dissolve. There was no sound at all. So now, up to this point, I have encountered two occurrences in just a few months, which before this, I had only recalled seeing two occurrences in my entire life. One at Hannah Lane 2 years before, worth describing, and previous to this, at least 10 years ago at Concession 8. One of the first eye-awakening experiences before I knew what was to come, but after the move on Concession 8, was at Hannah Lane. It was only a one-time happening, the only time at Hannah Lane and the last one that happened before moving to the ski hill. I woke fully alert and stared at a figure that was floating over my bed close to the bottom. I can still visualize this one isolated occurrence with a strong memory. He had on a white coat like a doctor's lab coat. He was the first that I had seen that was not a shadow. He was clearer to view, but then again, he was much closer. He was very thick through the chest and reminded me of a Mr. Toad. No neck, big head, and thick. My bedroom was at the front of the house, and outside the house was a street light that shone through both windows. It was bright at night in my room. I recall telling my best friend about this encounter, as it was scary and was out of the ordinary. The next occurrence that happened at the ski hill was completely different and left an impression on me. It was very haunting. I wrote about this one in my notebook. I have a few hard-covered books to keep track of the activity. It was sometime after things started, but only after a few happenings. I never did get into the habit of monitoring them. I actually thought that it was a phase or something temporary, but that it would end. I also would write an email to myself while at work. Some of the occurrences that happened the night before and were vivid in my mind. I'm glad I did write down those ones because it is a fresh description from the night before or shortly afterwards that I had also added the date. Most appeared as a short form style from the ones from working are very deep. Sorry about that. Most appear as a short form style, but the ones from work are very detailed. I've I'll write word for word what I wrote in this book, April 22nd, 2010. When opened eyes noticed an image at the end of bed at eye level looking at me. Image not clear, dissolved within seconds as usual. April 25th, 2010. I woke to find image floating towards the right. I'm on my back, just above my face. Smothering feeling, but I can also see the difference below the image towards the end of the bed. So I cannot see through it. It was like a blanket that was waving a bit. I did not lift my head. This one occurrence will always stand out for me. Soundly sleeping, I can feel something very close to my nose, but not touching, just over my face. When I opened my eyes, and believe me, they popped fully open, it was dark from what was over me, and then I looked downward and I could see the light from the room. There was a distinctive line of light and dark over my face when I looked up and looked down. I could see a bit of wave going on and thought it was like a cover or blanket floating above and over me. It was later on I thought that this could have been a hand placed over my face and lifting upwards towards and over my head. That was all that happened. This occurrence also clued me into knowing that whatever it was had a substance or mass to it. How else could I feel something just above my face and see both the end of what was covering my face and the light appearing as it moved towards my head? How could something appear in my world from nowhere, which should have a mass to it, and then disappears? I know it has a mass to it. It has mass if you can visually see the difference between a cover of black and having no light and light peeking out from below this mass, as well as a sense of feeling that something was over my face. It is mind-boggling to realize something can come and go from my world or space or air or presence and leave with no trace. It has a mass, and I can visually see this mass. Later, I discovered that it can also have color. Not all, but many do appear with color. From this occurrence and afterwards, I have been totally aware of my presence around me, totally alert, and I always open my eyes to view a subject. It is this one occurrence that makes me believe that something was awakening my senses. I'm always looking for clues as to what could be that is attracting these spirits. I only bring up this point because I actually thought maybe it was my present bed that was bringing through these spirits. I don't want to rule out any physical connections. The bed I presently sleep in was bought at auction when I lived at Concession 8. It was used by my daughter in her room, but later became my bed after my marriage ended. The bed is a four-poster queen bed and sits high off the ground. It is 3 feet from the floor to the top of the mattress. I actually have to lift myself up when I get into it. Falling out would be another story. The posts are thick, heavy, twisted, designed wood made from a dark mahogany. My height is, and here I go into higher, my height is 5 feet 6 inches, and with my arms stretched straight up, I can just touch the top of the post, measuring 6 feet 10 inches. These posts are actually used as a gauge for some of those visits. Gives me an idea of how tall they are. My room is 12 foot 6 by 11.3, which is compact and comfortable for a queen bed. The door entrance is at the corner of the wall. When I enter the room, I see the window centered on the opposite wall of the door. The bed is positioned in the middle against the wall connecting these two walls. The window is 58.5 inches wide and 46.5 inches tall. When in my bed, I face a closet with 2 sliding doors. There is a military tall chest on the right side of my bed, which has the alarm clock and a book under it, a print in it in a small artist easel, a couple of candles in a wine glass, and a tall lamp. On the left side of the bed is the dresser with the wooden jewelry box on the top and another small table lamp. Both pieces of furniture are the same height as the top of the mattress. There is also an old green chair with ottoman at the end of my bed, positioned in the corner beside the closet doors. It is a tight fit at the end of the bed. This chair used to sit in my great Aunt Mary's in the sitting room with TV. It was my great Uncle Jimmy's chair. He always sat in this chair. Great Aunt Mary and Uncle Jimmy were brother and sisters, and neither one ever married. At night when I go to bed, I leave my bedroom door open. I have curtains on the windows, but they are never closed. The light from outside usually keeps the room bright. Very seldom is there no light or some type of light outside compared to inside. Trees surround the house, but in the winter you can see through the trees to the neighboring houses. In the winter, the ski hill lights are on until 10 p.m., which provide a gentle pink light. There is always the reflection from the white snow bouncing around to give more light than in the summer. I do find winter nights filled with more light, especially during a full moon. During the summer, when all the tree leaves are out, it is a whole different view. I recall my first spring when the leaves came out in full. You can depend on the date as being the long weekend of May 24th for the leaves to be out in full. In 2009, my first spring there. It was just incredible. The color of green with the sun beaming on it was like the house being wrapped in a cocoon. All my other homes have been in the open. This one was in the woods. When I'm in my bed and look out the window, there are two old oak trees in sight, approximately 100 feet away. These trees are at least 100 years old. Their branches are fingered out. A neat view when the moonlight is in the background. Up to this point, I have never visually seen a spirit appearing during the daylight. It has always been while in bed, and almost always from the time I go to bed and fall asleep to within an hour or two. I have at times checked the bedside clock to see what time it is. I don't make a habit of this, but there are a few that have been noted. Then another notable one I wrote about happened like this. In early Saturday morning, and I've just woke up to see an image that appears at the side of my bed. It is a male figure standing, but not similar to the majority of other occurrences in that his direction is facing my open bedroom door and not towards me. I can only make out that it is a male form and the fact that he has a cap on. The only detail I can provide is his outline shape. He appears to be standing on the floor, so I would guess he is probably about my height or slightly taller than 5'6". This the time it took from opening my eyes and seeing this form dissipating range around 2 to 3 seconds. I quickly turn to see what time it is. The clock reads 5:43 a.m. This is this is usually around the time I'll wake up during the week, but there's no alarm set for the weekend. If I wake up at this time on the weekend, I usually just roll over and fall back asleep, for this is one of my weekend treats, sleeping in or lazing in bed. After seeing this form and noting the time, I've just eliminated more theory. Now I don't know what to expect, as this was the first time I've noticed a spirit or a ghost, if you will, in the early morning. All others have been seen just after I fall asleep during the night. This occurrence is similar in that it is still dark out. The sun has not come up. This now opens a lot of thought as I continue to observe and look for reasons to justify what is happening. I'm now sitting up in bed reviewing the complete night visits. This has been the most frequently visited night, with seeing 4 images in total, all different and all at different times. The frequency of occurrences is overwhelming for one night. The first image appeared shortly after falling asleep. For me, this seems to be the most notable time. This first image appeared right at my head level. I'm clouded by a form, but don't know what it is, as there is no human element to this one, just a cloudy image. There is a definite feeling of something being close to me. When I encounter spirits close to me, it always feels invasive and threatening. I'm always speaking out by saying, "No," and turn my position in the opposite direction. I find I'm more tolerant if they are further away. I have not always known that when I've felt a presence around me, that I would see something. In fact, I've only discovered within the first year how to wake myself up to visually view what my senses are telling me, that something is around me or watching me. This is how I describe what I'm talking about. Some may be able to relate, some may not. When you are young, you usually are in a really deep sleep. It is very hard to come out of this deep sleep. If someone tried to shake you or wake you up, your eyes would open and flutter. It was a chore to get out of this state. This is the way I would sleep. After you have a baby, your sleep changes. You are on high alert for the sound or emotion from your child. Not sure if a lot of men can relate to this one, but possibly. So when these occurrences first started happening, I recall waking and my eyes were trying very hard to open and stay open. After my senses told me something was around, I made myself become more aware or alert and opened my eyes to what I was being alerted to. So my sleep has changed by going from a deep sleep to a more surface sleep. Also, the fear that was inside of me from all that was happening aided in changing my sleep pattern. Today, it is like a second nature reaction. I just wake from my sleep without knowing why, and there is something around that I can see. I'm also noticing that after close to 5 years, the pattern is changing in that the fear is being removed and my sleep is more relaxed. I still wake, but I'm usually calm, which makes me think that I may be missing more of what is happening. I've also noticed after many years that when I have a cold or sinus problem or overtired, not much is going to wake me up. The body is healing and my sleep is important. Working at bringing myself out of a sleep has enabled me to view many encounters in many different shapes and forms without, without any set schedule. Although so far I'm safe to say all occurrences that I have seen are during the dark or without any sunlight. This has been my observation about timing. I have felt presences during the light or in times before going to sleep, but have never seen them. I also have theories for this, which in the future may change, and I'll end up redirecting theories again, as I did with the encounter with the encounter in the morning one. I had no idea why I'm able to physically view these spirits. Possibly it may have something to do with my eyesight. I do know I'm not alone in this world, and others have also viewed, but I'm just one of the few. I recall when working at a job, which would have been around the year 1995, that IS, meaning information systems, were upgrading our computers. For the first few days, the computer screen I was viewing was driving me crazy, as it was constantly moving or it, it was not still. I called to see if they could fix it. At that time, he said, you are seeing movement on your screen. And I said, yes. He said, I don't see what you see, but there are a small percentage of people that do. It was an easy adjustment. He made the adjustment for me until I agreed that it was settled in place. Who knows? Maybe one small observation about my vision could be connected to visually seeing spirits. I'm also nearsighted. Detail is not clear for me from a distance, as would someone else viewing the same. My bedroom is also not that large, so detail of a face at the end of the room might be less clear, as the closer the subject, the closer the detail. The other two occurrences that night, I'm not sure what time, as I do make a habit of viewing the time, as I do not make a habit of viewing the time each time this happens. But both were on the right side of my bed and both were female figures. They could have been the same figure, but at two different times. Two different places, and both times they are not touching the floor. They are floating. The fourth encounter was the male at 5:43. Since March-April timeframe of 2010, I have been subjected to continuous encounters. It was around March break of 2010. As, as time has progressed and these encounters continue, I have a need to write more about my experiences. It would be difficult It would be different if it had only happened once or twice, but to continue for over a year is more than just a short, brief encounter, as it is becoming a routine part of my life. Routine in the sense that it has not gone away. After the first year, I noticed that I was dealing with a situation a lot better, than when it first started happening. At first, it was so frightening. My head was spin with questions I had no answers for. Questions like, why is this happening to me? Am I personally getting close to death? What are these images? Are they afterlife? All these questions and so many more haunted me, not to mention how not to mention having to deal with it. I was so scared to go to sleep at night. I was scared at even the thought of night coming on. What keeps me insane is knowing that I have seen a familiar image. I have seen her before, and, and past experiences tell me she might be a regular visitor in my life. This person I talk about is my sister Sandy. She was my younger sister. I was born in April 1958, and there were less than 14 months between us. Sandy died at the age of 8. It was a heartbreaking time for all of us. Talking about Sandy still makes my eyes swell with tears. It was one of the most painful life experiences that I have had to live with. And this ends chapter 2. Stay tuned in another week for the next part, chapter 3. Thank you, everybody.